of law for the continuing blocking the ingress and egress of the Mauna Kea access road. I think that we had asked to have that placed on the agenda back in September. And we have, and now everyone is available here.
And is that petition spelled out?
It's not a petition, it was just a request for discussion by the Ethics Board.
This is a continuing concern, and it's now showing up on a fairly regular basis. I've noticed at least 3 letters to the editor, and let me just read one paragraph from a letter to the editor in, I believe, yesterday's paper with regard to the blockage of the road up on Mauna Kea. The pertinent part of the letter is, why are they being allowed to remain? Why haven't they been removed as the protesters to the wind farm? Apparently referring to protesters being removed from the wind farm in Oahu.
Right.
They are clearly in even more contempt of the law, and I am sure have caused far more serious damage to the flora and fauna. Has Hawaii become so lawless that its citizens must fend for themselves because the rule of law doesn't apply to some groups? What are we to do when the governor, mayor, and agencies, etc., no longer enforce the law? End of quote. And the letter goes on. The issue here is the question that the letter writers are raising, and that of this general concern is, does the Ethics Committee at some point have a role in asking the question of is the mayor upholding his office to enforce the laws of the state and county when it's prima facie obvious that 6 months have passed and the roads are still blocked?
Yeah.
I think it's really a state issue.
I mean, who is it that raises the question about failures of public officials to uphold their oath of office?
And this oath of office is taken by all politicians and us as board members and everyone. It says, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Hawaii, and I'll faithfully discharge my duties as a member of, in this case, Board of Ethics, but it would be, as mayor, as county council person, whatever. It's an oath of office that everyone takes. So is there a violation of that oath of office if you don't enforce the rules of this, Constitution of the if you just become, you really got me thinking about that, Larry, last time when you brought that up.
Do we only have the right to, or the obligation to address things that are brought to us, or do we have authority or standing to raise issues independently?
I'd be very curious to know if there's any precedent for a county board of ethics going to the state board of ethics.
Beyond the jurisdiction, in the sense that you guys have purview over this code of ethics in the county setting, in the state setting, basically, if you wanted to do it as a private citizen, you're more than welcome to, file an ethical petition with the state board of ethics. But as an actual board, it would be the first time, I believe.
Yeah, and it might just be thrown back that they can't respond to our petition, which would be.
There haven't been very many letters published in the paper finding fault or with the level of law enforcement at Mauna Kea.
The alleged conduct of someone other than the inquirer. Any person or the board itself may petition the board, itself, for an informal advisory opinion on the alleged violation of the code of ethics by an officer or an employee. So we could do that with regard to the mayor, the county prosecutor, and what we cite is section 14(1)B, an elected and appointed officers and employees shall demonstrate the highest standard of ethical conduct so that the public may have trust and confidence in the integrity of the government. And they're not exercising the highest standard of conduct if they're failing to uphold the laws, their oath, which says they're supposed to uphold the laws.
I mean, I think we should be
Proactive,
proactive.
yes.
Exactly.
But you'd actually have to look through the code and which section is it? Is it fair treatment? Is it a conflict of interest? You know, that kind of thing. So it might be something you guys want to look at more closely. You can't just say that it's a broad ethical violation. It has to actually be within the code of ethics that you guys are looking at.
I remember you asked that question, Larry, you asked that,
Yes, at the state ethics conference.
and it was,
They said it was an interesting and good question, and then everybody ducked.
yeah, everybody ducked. But I mean, you know, sometimes you got to break ground if you want to get somewhere. And if you don't ask a question, I mean, if the state ethics board wants to punt it back to us and say they have no authority or whatever, we could at least ask. That's mine. Because it just seems that there is no rule of law. It's just kind of ignored and looked the other way, and the person stopped at the traffic light, and the lights changed, but nobody's gone, so nobody says a word.
The specific language, it's a real stretch to get it to fit under any of these that I can see.
So you're saying under fair treatment?
Yeah, I mean, fair and equal treatment. I mean, they're not enforcing the laws of the county and state of Hawaii equally. There's a group of people who are blocking roads and are not being stopped from blocking roads. There are people who are trying to build a telescope and they're not being allowed access to the building site. I mean, those are the questions. I mean,
But there are thousands of people being you know,
arrested and dealt
arrested
with.
and,
Yeah.
and charged with these thousands of cases, so they could come back and say, well, we are applying the laws. They're just not looking at a bigger picture, apparently. But it was in the paper this morning, you know, listing how many thousands of these.
It's nothing to
these,
do
and
with the
these.
road, though. It's
Well,
all-
it's not taking on the
It's-
larger issue
Right.
of access to state land, which should be the
the
purview of the state, shouldn't it?
the arrest record I observed was all mostly traffic violations and a few.
That's right.
A few minor violent crimes, maybe perhaps, but nothing related directly to the road. And, you know, you have to think, the analogy, what if sacred land was discovered on Inouye Highway and they blocked the highway, or anywhere? Take Honolulu, what if they blocked Kealakekua, the main street, you know?
Yeah.
So the law should not be indiscriminately applied.
Well, it's-
Discriminately applied.
Is using county property, facilities, equipment, time, or personnel for private business, campaign purposes, or any other purpose other than for public purpose. So if you're using county resources to control people that are denying access, is that really the county's purpose?
It's not a public purpose.
It's not a public purpose. I mean, is that the fair treatment, the lack of fair treatment?
Well, technically, that would be the question you guys would take up if you guys initiated a petition, but I also wanted to remind the board that in order to do that, you would have to pass a resolution, which basically will give the scope of the investigation and all that kind of stuff. So before, it's on Rule 5.2, just so you know,
Under,
on your board rules. So when initiated,
Rules of practice and procedure.
yeah,
5 point.
it's basically speaking to when a board initiates its own investigations, that you shall make a formal resolution to conduct such a hearing or investigation. It shall define the nature and scope of the inquiry to be made, so,
You know, why is the rule of law not being enforced?
So do you want a motion that we do that?
We need a resolution, so it's a
Um,
motion for a resolution, correct, Malia? Yeah. Need a motion for a resolution to conduct an investigatory.
Investigation, yeah.
Investigation, okay.
Right.
and initiate a petition, I guess.
And initiate a petition. Correct? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board initiate an investigatory, or pass a resolution to define the nature and scope of the inquiry. We're going to define the nature and scope of the inquiry, which will be a resolution to conduct an investigatory hearing as to why the rule of law is not being enforced on that Mauna Kea on the access road. Is that
Think-
correct?
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion
Okay.
that the motion is to have a draft resolution for us to review and adopt
Okay.
if so desired.
Seconded.